This podcast contains paid advertisements, but more on that later. Welcome to the O'Connor Bootstrap podcast, where I discuss how you can grow your business by the bootstraps. This applies to everyone with an entrepreneurial spirit. That includes bootstrappers just starting out, established business owners, and business leaders. My goal is to help you grow both personally and professionally. I'm your host, Isaiah O'Connor. Today's sponsor is Audible. Audible.com, again, my favorite sponsor. It's my favorite because, I've used them for years. It's been the base of which I've built a lot of my business knowledge on and just bettered myself as a person in general by a lot of the books in Audible. Not just business books and personal growth books, but even by reading biographies by leaders, reading books written by leaders, also by listening to lectures and even the fun books, the relaxation books, you can still learn something from novels, historical novels, etc. There's actually a lot of information and things you can pull out about business and life by just reading. Especially nonfiction is, of course, the most important, but it's also good to relax and read a good fiction book here and there just to relax if you enjoy that sort of thing. And again, you can still learn from fiction books because the best fiction has elements of life and truth in there that you can use and apply in everyday life. Good to relax and take your mind off of business from time to time. Now, today's book recommendation is a fiction book, which is a new fantasy book. Well, relatively new. It's been out 6 months or so, maybe almost a year now. And it's called The Shadow of the Conqueror. And it's part of a new series called The Chronicles of Everfall. And this book was written by a YouTuber I follow named Shad M. Brooks. And I got the distinct privilege of being a beta reader on this book. So this book's a little bit personal to me. I do enjoy the book. I've listened to it at least 5 or 6 times. I read it through a couple of times before that as a beta reader. I did have a hand in helping the author craft this novel. Some of my recommendations were taken and used and applied in the novel. So again, it's a little bit special to me. But this is a great work of fantasy. I wouldn't recommend it just because I'm a beta reader on it, because I do like it. I do think it was a very well written book. And it's really cool, and it's a new world. It's very interesting. I like the way he does it. And Shad is very particular about making a hard magic system, so it's a bit more of a hard fantasy book. In other words, if you're into fantasy, this is the one where the magic has a rule system, and it's not just a instant fix for any situation. They can't just magically make something up that just all of a sudden makes everything go away. It's very well written, and I do like the storyline. I like the moral of the story, and it's really well written. It's called Shadow the Conqueror by Shad M. Brooks. It's part of the Chronicles of Everfall series. Go check it out. It's an amazing book, and soon to be a short film is in the works on it, so check it out. And of course, you can go get a free copy with your free 30-day trial over at audible.com/bootstrap with a capital B. That's audible.com/bootstrap with a capital B. So today I'm going to be talking about the employment contracts and compensation. How do you pay your employees? And where do you find the money to pay your employees, etc. Now, I'm not going to get too much into the contract. I'm going to read my contract that I have. And again, I'm going to put a copy of my contract up on my buymeacoffee.com and in my secret O'Connor Bootstrap podcast Facebook group, which is for members only. You can become a member for only $1 a month over at buymeacoffee.com/bootstrap. And $1 a month, it's pretty cool. I'm throwing some extras up, and of course, you can always communicate with me of any other extra stuff you would like me to toss up there, and we'll see what we can do. And so I'll go over the employment contract a little bit and what you need. Now, with the employment contract, I'm not going to get into too much detail for a couple of reasons. First of all, what you want to put in it varies from type of work to type of work, i.e., a person doing an employment contract for a person who is going to be doing your social media might include things about ownership of images, etc., etc., etc. Or you might have a contract where you need a non-disclosure agreement added into that. Or you might just need a pretty basic boilerplate contract that just covers the basics because you don't really have anything special to add into that. And of course, the other reason is you need to make sure it's legal for your city and state regulations, your country, if you're in a different country. You have to make sure that your contract fits within the legal parameters of what you're allowed to do and not do within the contract. Now, why should you have an employment contract? An employment contract is to make sure that you as an employer are protected while also protecting your employee. And you need to have it signed and agreed upon. Now, if you don't have a contract and then claim you have a contract with an employee, you can get yourself in trouble. And I know this because my wife had a job. They fired her because she was making too much money. She was a salesperson and she had an hourly plus commission. And she was so good that one month she sold 40% of all the store sales by herself. 40% of all the sales out of a team of like 12 people. She did 40%. She was really good. And she was making an additional full paycheck every single month just on commission alone in general. Well, they fired her and replaced her with 2 part-time employees that were not on commission. They then claimed that in her contract that if she was not working on the day the commission payment was going to be paid, then they didn't have to pay her the commission payment, which is just absurd on the face. Because no one in their right mind would say, oh, sure, don't pay me the money I earned if I'm not working there that day. No, that's insane. That's absurd on the face. She would never sign a contract saying that. And she didn't. She never had an employment contract. They were just making things up. And they were also crazy enough to put on the same termination paper that she quit without notice and 2 paragraphs down saying they fired her because of money troubles. So, yeah, they were just a scandalous company altogether, and we were looking at suing them for this, and we could have, except for it turns out they were also in bankruptcy, which means, yeah, we could sue them, but we were on a long, long, long list of people suing them for money, and it wasn't worth the time. But the point being was, if a person claims they have a contract with you and you don't have their signature, you don't have a contract. Not good. So it's good to get a good contract to protect you, to protect your employees, and it sets it up and it sets a good note and a professional as well. Again, you need to make sure your contracts are in perfect alignment with the law. And I'm not a lawyer, nowhere near a lawyer, and I know what's legal here in Norway for the contract, but that was only because I looked into my industry. Again, check your industry, make sure you get everything right. Now, of course, a contract should contain some basic stuff. You want to make sure you have the important contact information, your information, their information. Of course, you need to explain the job duties, the key results areas, key performance areas, as Dave Ramsey talks about, KPIs, the ownership, if you're going to buy them a uniform, if they keep the uniform, if you own the uniform, all these little details should be in the contract so there's no confusion. Then, of course, your pay will be in the contract. Now, I'm going to read through the contract, and when I read through the compensation plan, I will switch and talk about the compensation. But for now, I'm just going to read the basic part. So in my contract, I have it on my letterhead, and I just put it's a contract between me, my information, my business name, and organization number, all that good stuff. Then their name, address, phone number, national ID number, etc. Company address, and then the job title, date of hire, the department, and then the position type, as in, is it on call? Is it full time, part time, temporary on call, part time on call? Part time, temporary position, or permanent position. All that good stuff is in there, and I can select. Now, just a key tip: if you have access to a PDF creating program that you can edit, I actually use the paid for Adobe Acrobat Pro, and I was able to make a contract and then have the blank spots able to just type in the blanks, and then drop down menu on things like the position type, so I can just select through to quickly fill it out to be able to print it up. So then I've put in some details here. So position type, and on the position type, I need to edit this, but I put on the on-call permanent position. When it's an on-call position, I put in details about the position status. So if you're a full-time employee, I will put in, if you're a full-time employee, you have to work when called on, sick days, etc., whatever. But because it was an on-call position, I put in, the employee is not required to work when contacted. They may or may not accept the work offered. The employer is also allowed to call a different employee if the employee is unable to work on the date required. Now, I put that in there because, of course, it should be obvious if you're on call and you can't work, that the employer should be able to call someone else to work for you because they need the help, which is absolutely fine. But I put that in to cover my butt, and just in case an employee gets upset that they might feel like I'm snubbing them for another employee. So I just wanted to be very careful. And that's another thing. In the contracts, again, within the bounds of legality, you want to make sure you put anything in there that you can think of that they could possibly come after you for in advance. Just cover it as well as possible. And you can download a contract from online, make sure it's legal. If you have the resources, have a lawyer look at it to make sure it's good. Just make sure you're in the up and up. I put my trial period, 90-day trial period, a notice period, that during the trial period, they don't have to give notice, but after the trial period, I request a 1-month written notice. And I even put in that if they need a shorter notice period, for example, they get hired at a different job and they need to start earlier, they can ask for a shorter notice period, and it's optional if management will approve or not. Break policy. I put the break policy in there, which is a 30-minute break, etc. Unpaid break, or a 30-minute paid break, and then if it's over X amount of time, an extra unpaid break, etc. And again, this will vary from employee to employee, person to person, and mine is very specific to the type of jobs I do, because on the jobs I would do, some days it's only an hour you work. Sometimes it's 10, 11, 12 hours. So I put that in there. I even put in that on the break policy, and this is one of my little compensation things, if you work over 5 hours on the job with me, because again, 5 hours in one day is unusual for balloon decor, I will buy the food. And I just put a basic meal will be provided on the break, which means I can bring peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, or I can take them to McDonald's or Burger King or something and provide a meal. And then I put in the job description. What are you doing? What are the key components? Decor production crew. And then I explain what that is and go into details, making sure that they understand that this includes heavy lifting, working alone, working with power tanks, moving heavy stuff, putting that in there, including cleanup at the office and the other gopher type jobs that they may be doing. I also specified that if they're working at the office for prepping and cleaning up, they will be paid an hourly rate there as well. Now, I have two types of job descriptions. I have the decor production crew and the entertainer, because they're two different things. When you're making balloon decor, you're inflating balloons, making decorations, building things, helping hold the ladder, etc., etc., etc. But with an entertainer, you're not doing any of that, and you can do both in my job, or you can do one or the other. Now, an entertainer, of course, is the guy who makes the balloon animals and entertains kids. I also mentioned that this is a training position, i.e., if you don't know how to do it, I train you. And that's part of the contract where I agree that I will train you to do your duties that are there, especially since these are skill positions that most people don't just walk up and say, oh yeah, I know how to make 35 balloon animals, can I come work for you? That rarely happens. It's a pretty niche market and a niche skill set, so there's no real college that teaches balloon twisting as a skill set. So because of this, I make it very clear that I'm offering paid training to do this so that they can do it. Then I go into my compensation plan, which is quite complex. I throw in travel, because the type of job I have, you travel to the job site, to the job location, and so I pay for that or provide transportation to and from the office to the job site. Then I have a section on training, about not just training them, personal training at the office, but also include the opportunity to get paid for training, paid for by the company at a professional conference or other training opportunities that are paid for outside of what I can teach. Then I include my overtime policy, which is, honestly, I base my overtime policy on the US overtime policy. It's with slight change variation because, again, I live in Norway. But again, you want to cover all the details. Overtime. What do you pay on overtime? How do you pay overtime? What's considered overtime? Holiday pay. What are the holiday pay requirements? Vacation pay. What are the vacation pay requirements? Do you pay vacation pay? In Norway, it's mandated every employer does pay vacation pay, and you have to follow the law on that. So, of course, I do. Then I set the pay period, and with myself, because it's such a small company and I oftentimes have sent out invoices and I'm waiting for the invoices to be paid, I may not have them on a certain date. So I gave myself a 10-day spread of payment for the employee between the 1st and 10th of the month, because it's a 10-day invoice time on my invoices. Just make sure. Then I also put that they will be paid on the second month following the month the work was performed. For example, work performed in September will be paid in November, to make sure that they're not expecting to be paid that very month if, for example, they did work on September 30th or whatever. Just make sure I have some cushion there, and they're not expected to be paid immediately. Then I also put in when the contract can be negotiated, and I put that the contract can be negotiated once a year on the anniversary of the hire date or a change of title or department. So, for example, if I promote them to manager, I will redo the contract. If they're a balloon decor production crew and they want to learn how to become an entertainer, I might renegotiate the contract, etc. So that's just the overview of my contract. I didn't read word for word, but just to give you an idea of what type of things you want in the contract. You want to cover your bases, make sure that it's very clear communication between you and your employee, what you're expecting of them, what they can expect of you, and that they agree to these things. And make sure they're very happy with it and they're comfortable with it as well. Now to get into the kind of both challenging and, in my opinion, a little bit fun part. Again, because my view is if you're able to employ someone, you're helping them out and you're providing them a way to provide for themselves and or their families, which I think is one of the most important things, and that is compensation. Challenging because you want to be able to compensate your employee as well as possible while still maintaining a profit, because an employee needs to make you more than they cost you, otherwise you can't have them. And that can be a problem, especially if you're a small operation like myself. Because if you don't have a high revenue, as I had mentioned before, if you don't have a steady revenue, you may not be able to afford a steady employee. And that's where having an on-call employee, in my case, helped, because I would bring them in to work jobs where I would be able to pay them off of that job immediately. And that was part of the plan. I planned a way to make sure that I could pay them well when they were working, because I would know for sure I had the money coming in for the job. Now, let's talk about compensation types. There's 3 basic compensation types. There's the ever so common hourly rate. You work for me, and while you're working for me, I will pay you X amount of money per hour. Very common, very normal, and depending on the position, quite understandable. Then there's a salary. I will pay you X amount a month, no matter how much you work. Of course, we all understand salary positions are usually reserved for management type positions, and yeah, I'm mixed about those. It's nice to know that you're getting the exact same amount of money every single month, but I've worked salary positions, and it's more or less indentured servitude. Because while, yeah, you can work less than 40 hours and make the same amount of money, odds are you're going to be working 60, 70, 80 hours a week and making less than your employees when you break it down to an hourly rate. I was working as a manager once at a gas station, and I figured out my hourly rate from all the hours I was putting in was about $3.50 an hour. Yeah, not good. Salary can be bad. Then you have performance-based pay, and this can be either a production amount, a per piece amount. For example, when I was just out working the trees, planting the trees, I was paid per tree planted. Every tree I put in the ground, I got paid X amount of money. And in order to make good money, I would have to plant a lot of trees a day. And if I didn't plant a lot of trees a day, I would not make a lot of money, which was rather difficult in that position. Of course, being an out of shape 40-year-old man didn't help the situation very much, to be honest. Or, of course, you can have a commission based pay where they get a percentage of the sale they make. Now, out of these three main types, I prefer the performance-based pay model for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's easier for you as an employer to pay them because if they're performing, that means they're providing you a high level of value for you to pay them. And you're likely making money off of them enough to be able to pay them, especially commission pay. If your employee is on commission and they're selling something, they're bringing you money in and you're giving them a piece of that pie. And pretty fair. And then if they're bringing you money, then of course now you have money to pay them. So that works out well. Performance-based pay. When I was doing trees, my boss was being paid per tree as well. So every tree planted, he would gain paid from the main client and he'd pay us back down from that. So again, performance-based pay means you can pay your employees. Now, hourly pay is nice and comfortable for an employee to have sometimes, depending on the position. Because, of course, some jobs you can't really have a full commission pay because it just doesn't work that way. You can't really give a dishwasher a commission-based pay. But on the flip side, commission-based pay, hourly performance-based pay does give an additional incentive to do a job well done. So, yeah, you gotta figure out a way to do that. Now, here's a trick. Here's what I recommend is you get really, really creative with the way you come up with your pay plan. Go wild with the way you come up with your compensation. And also remember, there's other types of compensation. For example, paid training, pay for conferences, pay for insurance. All those benefits are considered compensation. Company vehicle is compensation. All these different things are part of your compensation package. You got to make sure it's very comprehensive, and the more comprehensive you have, the better it is. Now, you want the compensation plan to attract and keep your best employees, but you don't want the pay to be the only thing that keeps them there. It should be a part of the package. That's why they want to work for you. They want to work for you because they like you, they like your mission, they like the job, and the pay needs to just be good. Matter of fact, in the book Good to Great, they discovered that some of the top performing managers, level 5 leaders, were actually paid less than some of the level 4 managers that performed less well. So you can't necessarily say that if I pay a person more money, they'll do better. Not necessarily. But it is in there, and it is an incentive, and it's important. Now, I did come up with a way to pay everyone in my company a commission, even if that's not the primary pay. Now, how did I do that? It's simple. If you work for me and you bring me a customer, I will give you a percentage of that sale, period. If in my company, it's a balloon company, and if I hired you as say an accountant, and you're working and you're my accountant, and you bring me a customer because your brother's getting married or your cousin's getting married, and they come and you say, hey, my cousin's getting married, I told them to use you, and they're coming here and they do the wedding, I will give them a percentage of that as a commission. And I put that in the contract. So even if their job is not to sell, but they bring me a client, they will get paid commission, and it's in the contract. Matter of fact, my last employee was production crew and an entertainer. He did both. And of course, when your job is to sit there and inflate hundreds of balloons and stick them in a bag for me, that's not a position where you're likely to go out and sell stuff to people. But if you bring me a customer and the job gets paid, I will give you a percentage of that. You will all get commission. So I found out a way to give all my employees the opportunity to make commission. I think it's only fair if you help the company make money and you bring me money, then it's only fair that you get paid as well. I mean, why not? And that leads me to another payment type, which a lot of companies do, which is often not reported on, and that is a sharing bonus, which again, I think is a great way to encourage employees to do a great job. Because what a profit sharing bonus is quite simple. When the company makes a profit, you share that profit amongst the employees. And this is a great incentive for employees to do a good job because the more profitable the company, the bigger their bonus. And it's every employee does their best to make the company profitable because the more profitable it is, the bigger the bonus they get. And bonuses, again, are a great way to help incentivize good work. And I think the profit sharing bonus is one of my favorites because it's about valuing the employees and showing that they are valuable for helping you and you're not just taking all the money and they're not working just for you. They're working as a team for their families. You're providing value for them as well. Again, the more people you hire, the more people you can provide for, the better the community is. Again, back to that whole giving value, taking care of people, which is the most important thing. And of course, there's, speaking of commission, and as well, one more thing, you have something called a SPIF, a Sales Performance Incentive Fund for a sales position, which is basically an instant bonus on certain products that you want to sell. For example, when I worked at Radio Shack, we had spiffs on the extended warranty. Every time someone bought an extended warranty from us, we'd get $2 immediately on our paycheck. Every time someone bought a cell phone, it'd be anywhere between $5 and $35. If they bought a cell phone with all the accessories, it could be up to $50 on our paycheck immediately, that moment. So that's called a SPIF, a Sales Performance Incentive Fund. And again, when it comes to compensating your employees, you can do a mix of all the above. You can change things up. You can set limits. You can set increases. You can set raises to come in. And another thing you can do is you can have a training wage that's lower, but once they're trained, you increase their wage once they've hit a certain metric where you can rely on them to do the job and actually do it alone. And if they can do the job stand alone, then it can help you make even more money. Therefore, you can raise their wages because now you're making more money off of them. Now, with all this in mind, when I created my compensation plan, it got very complex, and my poor accounting program didn't like it, and I had to kind of really force edit some of the things because I had different rates for different things and different just hey, I got creative. And oh, you can also do a percentage of the job. That's another thing you can do, which I put in where if an employee does a job for you, this is something like balloon company, construction company, etc. You can, what I did was I gave them an hourly or a percentage of the job that they do. So that meant that, for example, they did a setup for me and I would charge the client. Oh, this is before tax, by the way. I mean, after tax. So I had a client and I had a job that I did that would pay around 10,000 kroner for the job. Now, when plus tax, so 10,000 was the base rate, not including the sales tax that I had to add onto it. So 10,000 kroner, and initially when I started, it took me 8 hours to do this. But with practice and better equipment, I got it down to 2 hours. So basically, I was making 5,000 kroner an hour, 5,000 crowns an hour for doing this job, which translates into about $500 an hour for this particular job. Now, if I had an employee do that job for me, he could get his hourly pay of 200 kroner an hour or whatever for 2 hours, make 400 kroner, or he could do the job alone and make 10% of that job, which would have been 1,000 kroner. So he could have made either $400 or crowns, or 1,000 crowns for the same job. And I set it up that he would get paid whichever was the higher amount. So again, give me an incentive to do a job, do it well, and do it quickly because I want it to be done quickly. So if he did a job quickly, he might make more money doing the job quickly than he did by an hour, which means he wasn't just sitting around wasting time and not working, thus costing me money and not getting the job done. So I threw in this extra incentive that if he finishes the job quickly and the job, he earns me more money from the job by doing it quickly, he gets a bigger compensation. So let's go through my very extensive and crazy compensation plan. On the decor, I had the decor as part of it. Basic training wage will apply until the employee can perform their job duties with minimum direction. When working on a job with a team of 2 or more, the rate will be 150 kroner an hour. If working alone on decor or other labor work, cleaning, etc., the wage will be 150 an hour or 5% of the total job price before tax, whichever is greater. For example, if the job is billed to the customer at 10,000 kroner, the employee will receive 500 kroner. That was the training wage. Remember this. When the employee has completed the basic training and can work unsupervised with minimum direction, the wage will increase to 200 kroner an hour for labor on a team of 2 or more, and 200 kroner an hour or 10% of the total job price when working the job alone. I also did this because there are some jobs which will take them maybe half an hour, 45 minutes, if that, to do the job. And they can earn twice as much on the 10% than they could on the hourly rate on that type of thing. Then I had the rate for balloon entertainment, which is making balloon animals with or without a clown suit. Now this one, again, was an hourly rate, and I made it a little bit higher because it was a little bit more skilled. So the training rate for twisting started at 125 an hour for balloon twisting and 200 for clowning. Now, why did I change it up? Because when I work as a balloon twister without makeup, I charge a lower rate. And if I work as a balloon clown with a clown suit and clown makeup on, then I charge more. So with my employees, if I'm making more, they're making more. That's the way I set that up. So if I'm working a job making balloon twisting and I have them with and they're doing balloon twisting, we're just in regular street clothes, dressed nice but still not in a clown suit, I charge something like 1,250 crowns an hour. So they start at 175 an hour. But then if I wear a clown suit, it's 1,500 crowns an hour. And therefore, the employee gets paid 200 crowns an hour because I'm getting paid more, he's getting paid more. He's wearing a suit, I'm wearing a suit. It's an extra part of the service. I charge extra for that extra service. Therefore, the employee gets paid extra if I get paid extra. And then I put this in. When the employee can pass a twisting exam given by either the company owner or manager, the pay rate will increase to 200 kroner an hour for balloon twisting and 250 kroner an hour for balloon clowning. Again, they get a higher rate for clowning, but I set a a set mile marker, as it were, of when you can do this and you can pass this, you will get an increase in pay. Because then, if you can do this, you can pass the exam. That means I can send you off by yourself, and you can go and work another job completely separate from me, and it will help me make money. And of course, I'll pay you more because you're making me more money. I'll pay you more. Again, as an employee makes me more money, I try to share back with the employee that much. Matter of fact, I had someone look at this compensation plan and said, "Are you making any money off of this?" And the answer is yes. I do make money off of this. Of course I make money off of this, because I wouldn't make this plan and hire a person to not make money. That would be counterproductive. Of course I make money. It's generous. Yes, I know it's generous. But if they're making money and they're making me money, then I'm happy. I'm not going to be stingy with my employees. I'm not going to try to keep every penny to myself. No. My employees are important, and I care about them, and I want them to succeed as well as I do. I want myself to succeed, so if we both succeed, then we're good. And if you make your employees happy and they feel like you're taking good care of them, you're going to keep them longer. The only problem that I had with my one employee, Iric, is he was a college student who was needing to leave to go off on studies off in Spain, for one, so that was the main reason he left. For the second thing is he might have stayed put if I was able to give him a full-time wage, which I could not do it. So, and I knew that. And I knew he was planning to leave to go off to Spain eventually to do his studies, so I knew that. So the only problem I had with him was he was an incredible employee, and I could not afford to pay him what he was worth. Even with this compensation plan, I just did not have enough work for him to compensate him enough to stay with me, which is sad. But hey, it's okay because he was such an incredible employee, and I hit a slump in business, so that meant I just could not hang on to him. So yeah, but still, even then, when he was with me, I made sure he got paid well for the work he did. Then I also travel compensation, where if they need to use their own vehicle to travel from the office to the job site, then I would pay them at 4 crowns per kilometer. And then I would also provide a bus card paid for by the company as part of the compensation to use to and from the job. Then again, compensation for special training. I also put in that if they chose to do a course that was outside the company, because in the balloon world, again, there's sometimes special conferences and courses where you can pay to learn a new technique or a new system, then I would pay the employee. I would not pay the employee an hourly rate for those things, but I would cover the course cost, all travel and food expenses. So they basically get a paid for company vacation, all expenses paid. That's a working vacation, going to a conference. Of course, they're not just hanging out and having fun. I mean, they are fun, but he'd be learning something on company time. I wouldn't be paying him an hourly wage because I'm already covering the expensive course cost, etc. But I put that in there so that it was very clear. Again, making sure that they understand if I send them to a training program that they choose to go to, this is an optional training. So if they want to do the training, I will pay for it. But because they're optional, they will not be paid an hourly rate because they are choosing to do this on their own free time. But I will cover the cost. Then again, my overtime policy, how much is overtime, what I consider overtime, all that good stuff. Holiday pay. I just followed the local and state rules. So that's kind of what I talk about with compensation. You can have fun with it. As you can tell, I had like 5 different rates different rate for hourly. I had 3 different hourly rates, 4 different hourly rates, plus commission, plus a hourly or percentage of job completed rate. That's like 6, 7. I lose count. Different pay rates for one employee. Yeah, it can get confusing, but it made them feel like they had an opportunity to make decent money when they're working me. And oh, by the way, the reason why I had a lower rate if working in a team versus working alone is because when you're working on a team, most likely you're working on a team with me or a manager of some sort, someone who's in charge and leading the group, and you are most likely just doing the grunt work, just inflating and tying balloons, and not much else. So there's not a lot of skill required. You're just assisting the main thing. So therefore you earn less money because you're not doing a lot of the extra special stuff. If you're doing it all by yourself, again, because of the added responsibility of doing it by yourself and taking care of it, I compensate you more for that. So I try to make the compensation very varied and make the employee feel very comfortable with the compensation plan. Anyway, I think this will be the last of the hiring series on hiring, contracts, pay, all that good stuff. I might revisit some of the stuff later on, of course, but I think this will give you a good idea of what the hiring process is, how you pay somebody, how to get them set up, and how to get people on board and into your company. From here on out, I'm going to start talking about training and growing your employees and leading your employees and promoting your employees and all this other stuff. Because all this hiring part is part of the leadership series, but it's like a series within a series, because if you don't hire people and you're working by yourself, then you don't have anyone to lead. So in order to lead people, you have to have employees. So that's why I stuck this in with the leadership series in the middle of that, because now I can start talking about how to train, how to lead, and how to grow people within your organization. Anyway, you all have a good day. Talk later. Bye-bye. If you found value in this content, please leave a comment and give us a 5-star rating on whichever podcast platform you use. We're on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google, and most other podcast platforms. If you would like to support us, you can check out our sponsor links, or if you'd like to support us directly, you can donate or join our membership program at buymeacoffee.com/bootstrap. Of course, it really helps when you share these podcasts with your friends as well. If you'd like to interact with me and other bootstrappers and leaders, you can join us over at our O'Connor Bootstrap Podcast Facebook group. You have been listening to the O'Connor Bootstrap Podcast, an Atheoz Business Solutions podcast. For our companion podcast, the Atheoz Business Podcast, which is hosted by Jason St. Clair, past episodes and related blogs, please check out our website at www.atheoz.com, which is at www.atheoz.com or theoz.com. Until next time, I have been your friendly neighborhood entrepreneur, Isaiah O'Connor.